I'm Jacinta Phelan, and I am from I'll Meet You in the Lobby, and / now we're in lockdown, so I'll Meet You in Lockdown. And today I have got Matt Sykes, and Matt Sykes is a nature-based tourism consultant. So I'd like to welcome you, Matt. Welcome to I'll Meet You in the Lobby, or lockdown, I should say.
Thank you, Jacinta. We're still close. We're still connected.
That's good. That's good, isn't it? What would we do without Zoom and Skype and all these great connections? It's really good. At least it keeps us all connected. Now, Matt, you've got an interesting background, and you're a nature-based tourism consultant. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? You've had an interesting career, so tell us all about it.
Sure. Look, maybe a brief snapshot. Straight out of high school, I went to the University of Melbourne and studied landscape architecture. So really growing up, had a really strong passion for the outdoors, as well as design and planning. So after a few years doing work, particularly in my home region of Gippsland, I got the travel bug, as Australians tend to do, and went off to Europe. Ended up starting a postgraduate diploma in entrepreneurship at Cambridge, based in England. And that was actually an online course, so it allowed me to come back, but it kind of was a shift, and it ended up setting me down a slightly different path. And a number of years later, I ended up going down to Tasmania, getting into tourism, worked with the Tasmanian Walking Company for a number of years, and then managed their Cradle Mountain Huts walk product, and came back to Victoria only in the last couple of years to work with Peninsula Hot Springs, who I had an ongoing relationship with. But that opened the door into wellness tourism, and I helped them establish a business case for that particular part of their business. So it's been a bit of a step from landscape architecture and entrepreneurship into tourism, but all of those skills just continue to layer up.
So the Peninsula Hot Springs has been huge here in Victoria. It's really grown. So you've been all part of that, no doubt, with the marketing side of it. Also, did you market? You were also marketing at Peninsula Hot Springs too, or were you mainly?
Not so much as the marketing. So essentially, what I was involved with is that there was a strategic direction that the business wanted to steer beyond the bathing experience and into more of the wellness space. So the first stage of that was setting up a plan around developing a series of activities that people could do on top of the bathing. So it was, ranging from yoga and Pilates classes to sauna workshops where you're talking about hot and cold therapy, even to body clay experiences. Hot Springs Yoga was a really fun one where every weekend people are guided through a yoga class while they're sitting in the Hot Springs pools in the amphitheatre, which, it's a sensational experience. So it was kind of the first stage, these activities were meant as like an introduction for people that maybe haven't experienced or practiced, wellness before. So it's just really accessible, really fun, great friendly instructors. And then eventually, as accommodation and other parts of the business develop, they'll work towards retreats and, longer programs and education offerings. So my role was in more the business planning and then getting the operations of those activities up and running.
Okay. So then from there, can you tell us a little bit about how you've got into this new Victorian bathing trail, which sounds amazing? How did that all come about?
Sure, yeah. So last year I was really fortunate, the year before I was really fortunate, 2018, to receive the Victorian Tourism Industry Council's Lynette Bergen Fellowship. And essentially that allowed me to pick an area of the industry which I guess I saw the potential for growth for myself, but also for the industry. And I guess having been in the hot springs and bathing space, that was what I wanted to focus on. And it started out with recognising that in Victoria at the moment, you have two existing hot springs destinations. So you have Peninsula Hot Springs on the Mornington Peninsula, and then you've got Deep Blue Hotel and Hot Springs at Warrnambool. But what many people don't realise that there's actually 5 hot springs projects that are in planning stage at the moment, and maybe even more than 5 now. So what you've got this emerging market, and when you look at precedents elsewhere around the world, in Colorado, Japan, Canada, also in New Zealand, there's these hot springs and wellbeing tourism trails that stretch, anywhere from 700 right up to 1,200 kilometres. So they become these epic journeys. So I headed off through Japan, China, the Nordic region, England, and the United States, studying benchmarks, visiting destinations. Some of it was pretty hard work, having to, relax and sit in pools a lot. But, I got to meet a lot of the business leaders behind these, and it was really eye-opening that Australia and Victoria is very much at the beginning of something. So what I did is I came back and I brought those ideas, and I knew that we have to really, to make this really come off, we have to think boldly. So the vision that I had was for this Great Victorian Bathing Trail, which would stretch right across Victoria's southern coastline. It would be 900 kilometres long. It would start around Mallacoota to Meetung, through into Latrobe Valley, down towards Phillip Island, and then Mornington Peninsula, a string of floating saunas, harbour bars and sea bars around Port Phillip Bay, then across to the Bellarine Peninsula, 12 Apostles, and eventually past Warrnambool and Portland. So the anchors really are the hot springs, mineral bars, floating saunas, harbour bars, these. And then that's the main corridor. But then alongside that, you've got organic farms, you've got nature walks and forest therapy experiences, you've got wildlife corridors, Indigenous cultural experience. So it really becomes this corridor for not only hot springs, but broader, nature-based wellness experiences for the state. So it's a really big idea. It's going to take some time to get there, but the pickup and support from international organisations has been great. And just in the last couple of days, I've submitted it as part of the World Tourism Organisation's Healing Solutions Tourism Challenge, which is part of the COVID-19 response. So we need ideas.
It is. It's fabulous. Who will be, so from the point of view of who will be visiting these, who do you visualise visiting? Is it groups of people, solo travellers, couples? Who would you sort of think would be sort of interested in something like this?
Yeah, well, I guess the document itself is probably aimed at more the tourism industry. And then that would lead into a hot springs and wellness tourism strategy for the Victorian government, which then gets plugged into the broader strategy. And then I think in time, if you look at, let's say what's happening at Peninsula Hot Springs, you get a number of groups coming through. So let's say, couples doing, a short getaway, that would certainly be one. Girls getting away for a hens party or just an escape is certainly another. Then you've got families, you've got the older, retirees market, where the hot springs in particular is really good for their joint mobility, arthritis, these kinds of things. Fantastic. But I think you end up with, the full kind of from start of life to, to retirement, and because we all need to look after our well-being.
And when do you visualise all this to sort of come together? Like how many? Is it years? Is it only a couple of years or a couple of months or?
Yeah, sure. So look, the vision was for 2030 that this could be realised, and I think there's a number of steps in between then. But I think stage one, even some promotion around the concept and trying to connect the dots between existing experiences. You know, you've got two anchors at the moment with Peninsula and Deep Blue. I think if you end up with one in East Gippsland, such as at Meetung, which is currently being proposed,
right,
then you've got three. You know, within 2 or 3 years, we could have the foundations laid.
absolutely, yeah. In your travels, who do you think's doing it well in that space, or the best?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Look, I think there's a few different ways that you can look at that. So I guess if we talk about these large scale pilgrimage trails, the best benchmarks are UNESCO World Heritage listed trails like the Camino de Santiago in Spain, and then you've got the Kumano Koro Trail in Japan, which has a combination of hiking and hot springs. So you walk for 2 days, then it's a day of hot springs and rest in the middle, and then you walk for another 2 days. But the hot springs trails themselves, Colorado is excellent. They've got the Colorado Historic Hot Springs Loop, which is about 850 kilometres long. It's over half a dozen destinations, and then they've linked it with all of their other activities, whether it's hiking or skiing or rafting. Japan also really strong. So that's the trails. And then, of course, if you look at hot springs culture, Iceland is amazing. Japan is amazing. Those are probably the two that stand out.
Okay, they all offer different things too, which is it sounds like a really structured holiday in the way of it sounds, for people, there's a lot of different things to do, as you've explained, but I can see there's from a point of view of a structured holiday, it sounds terrific. Especially how many weeks would you think would be suitable for something like this to go away from, like, if you're going to do the trail?
It's a really good question because I could imagine people spending a month stepping through from end to end.
Right.
But then in a similar way, I could imagine a couple doing a getaway and just doing one section of it, for 2-3 days, something like that. And when you've got the eastern and the central and the western sections, you can do that however you really wish.
Yeah. As you and I speak, we're in unusual times. COVID-19 has hit us at the moment, and we're, I still wake up of a morning thinking, what is going on? Like, it's really, been a shock to everybody, and I think it's just unbelievable. We would never have imagined this could happen to us. And I'd like to get your take on what travel looks like. How do you think travel looks like on the other side of COVID-19?
Yeah, look, it's a really it's a phenomenal and in some ways devastating time for the tourism industry in particular. A lot of my friends and colleagues have either lost their jobs or are running businesses where they've had to stand down large parts of their team. So I think that in itself is quite hard to process. But there's also another side to it where I guess you start to hear people talking about what the future could be and how this represents perhaps a line in the sand. And I think generally some of the people that I'm talking to, it's some of those ideas that have been sitting on the periphery for a while but seem to be coming more into the centre. So certainly stronger connections with community, stronger connections with the environment, and I guess maybe starting to aspire towards this more regenerative or restorative approach to tourism, where you're kind of looking at blending, like at the moment, let's say this challenge that the World Tourism Organization has thrown up. So it's a collaboration between the World Health Organization and the WTO. So, it's easy for us to separate these things. But if you look at wellness tourism, there's a lot of activities that tourism destinations can help facilitate, which you could classify as preventative health. So hot springs are a classic example of that, whether it's walking, whether it's cycling, whether it's yoga, different retreats, whether it's, more food-based. So I think what I see is that from a traveler's point of view, they're going to come out at the end of this, and firstly, they're just going to want space. They just want to be out in nature, not in their own backyard, not in their own house. I think once they experience that, they're wanting to be connecting with people and and their mates, their family that they haven't seen for ages. So I think naturally people will probably gravitate into some of our regional areas, which is excellent to help bounce back our tourism industry. But I also think that they'll be craving, things that noticeably are great for their health and bring people closer together. And as I say, that's what I think this regenerative tourism concept has a lot of scope, and that's what I'm focusing some time on at the moment.
Yeah, I can't believe how many people I see just in the last week or two, including myself. I'm out walking at least twice a day, on some of the, I'm from Gippsland too, as you know, and we've got some great walking tracks here and just, places to walk around town and everything up here in Warragul. But it's incredible the amount of people that are out, and couples and people that you just don't usually see. Where I live, people sort of drive into their driveways overnight, straight into the garage. No neighbours really know each other. And I have to say, I think even though we've had to keep our distance, people are getting to know each other more. People are walking past their houses more. And it's been a really incredible time. So it's from that point of view, I can see, with your situation with wellness and everything, I think it's going to boom. I think definitely after hopefully, soon, hopefully after September, we can all be released from our homes. But
at the same time, it's quite remarkable that the change that you're describing there. It's I'm on the Mornington Peninsula, so it's really clear that that's happening. But I think, beyond those steps of our immediate neighbourhoods, once you've got that connection strengthened, I think instead of that long holiday that people might have been putting on their radar, I think it is these regional areas, still maybe interstate, but you can already see it shaping up, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything else that you want to discuss with us about tourism in general? Is there anything else there that you have noticed yourself over the last couple of weeks, especially maybe, I suggest you'd probably live on LinkedIn too, like I do. What are you seeing? I'm seeing some really great, I suppose from destinations, some really great advertisements, not so much selling the place, but selling, it's not selling, I should say, it's, they're discussing pausing your life and coming back to those places eventually and travelling eventually. I think Destination Portugal have just released an advertisement actually, and it's just beautiful the way they've put it together. Actually, Dubai have also, and they're really lovely to watch without, selling, to come there now sort of thing, because we can't, but it's sort of offering a dream, I suppose, and for the future. So is there anything you can share there, if people that have been sort of any sort of companies or tourism companies that have been promoting travel after all this?
Yeah, look, I think one of the businesses I've been closest to is Peninsula Hot Springs, and their team is certainly talking about how to manage and maintain connection between to their staff, but also to their community and customers at the same time. And I think sometimes we don't really realise that these places that we travel to, they become a big part of us. and not being able to get there, it's like somehow we're missing out. But I think there's some beautiful opportunities for storytelling and some habits, some training, some great things on social media that businesses can be doing and are doing to maintain those relationships. And having a bit of a laugh about it as well. You see quite a bit of good humour at the moment. Yeah. So look, I think it probably what it makes me think about is that there's this cultural influence or this cultural leadership that tourism businesses have, and I guess it's a really interesting point to reflect upon that and our relationships with our customers, because often, it's not just one visit, and travel is often where you save all your money because that's where you want to spend your time. So it means a lot to people.
Yeah. Well, I've got a couple of questions before we wind up. Where are you off to next when we're able to escape our homes again? Where do you think you'll be off to next for a holiday?
Look, it won't be. I don't have any holidays planned. I mean, because I travel a lot for work. When I holiday, this is actually a holiday. Being home in some ways. But I mean, for me, in terms of holidays, I'd probably be getting into some of the areas of regional Victoria. Yep. But I have an upcoming trip to Sweden and the Nordic region, and I'm working with a food tourism company there called Move Eat. So we're working on a business plan and a sustainability strategy. I'm also looking at there's a new project called Arctic Bath, which is right up quite far north, where you've got a floating hotel and series of bars out on the lake. In Helsinki, there's another similar project. So that's the next one on the cards.
Okay, and just one last question, and I always ask this in all my interviews. What's been your most emotional moment while you've been travelling?
Wow. Oh, wow. That's a good question. Most emotional moment.
And you weren't expecting it, like something that just sort of came over you and went, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, look,
I'm not, it's hard to say whether it's the most without a lot of reflection, but there was a moment when I was traveling in Japan, so it's south of Osaka, on this Kumano-Koro pilgrimage. So essentially you fly in, what is it? It must be Kansai Airport there. Then you take a train towards the south, and you set off along the Kii Peninsula. And this particular trail is very unique because it's basically like the founding story of Japan in terms of history. But what happens is you walk through the forest, and then you pop out, stay in these little villages and homes of an evening. But one of the days we were walking along, I was traveling with one of my best mates. We were walking along, and we came out of the forest onto this really vast valley. And when you stepped out, there was kind of this balcony which looked out over this incredible pavilion. So it was one of those tiered pavilions. And in the distance was this very picturesque and just incredible waterfall they call it at this place Nachi Taisha. So it's a very sacred spot. It's, UNESCO World Heritage listed. But having been through, that forest for a number of days, coming out onto this vast view, it was just like this incredible moment of relief and awe and wonder. My friend captured the moment. He took 3 photos. The first moment, I'm just laughing. The second moment, I'm leaning over because I'm exhausted with a 25-kilo pack. And then the last one, I'm just looking up to the sky and just being thankful. So that's probably a really fond memory.
Well, that's a beautiful way to end the interview. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us today, and we'd love to have you back, probably in a couple of months to hear a little bit more about what's going on with this Victorian spa trail. It just sounds fantastic. It sounds, I think we'll do really well out of it. I think a lot of people will really embrace it. And thank you for your time. and stay safe. Thanks very much.
And yeah, everyone at home, just look after yourselves. There's so much you can be doing, walking and sleeping and eating well. All of those practices, so important right now.
And keep your hands clean. All right. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Cheers. Thanks, Jacinta.